The meeting to order, and then we say the pledge.
Yep, there we go.
Yep.
See, I'm already late, so.
Yeah,
All right, we'll call the meeting to order and we'll do the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. I think Judge Curtis was up first. Or?
Yep. Do you want to adopt your agenda?
Oh, yeah. See, I'm trying to get caught up.
I know.
So we have the agenda. And I'm sure everyone has had a chance to look at the agenda. Is there anybody that has anything to add? Or if not, then I'll get a motion to accept the agenda.
I'll provide a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second that. See any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Now, we'll get to Judge Curtis.
Afternoon, folks. Appreciate your time. Two issues in front of you today. Take them in order that they're on the agenda. First has to do with the payment of the liability insurance for Officer Marquardt. So really what I'm looking for is to see if there's anywhere within any of the insurance policies that Officer Marquardt could be covered. So the way it works right now is Judge Black has issued an order allowing for retired Officer Marquardt to carry while he's here in the county buildings. And what Officer Marquardt has looked into is trying to find third-party insurance to cover himself. And essentially the way it works with having a carrying like that is they cover you personally. There's not insurance policies to really cover while you're at work. I mean, that's kind of the issue that he's run into. I think it's very important to have Officer Marquardt covered because, you guys are the court and security. I know some of you folks are new on the board, but I can tell you one of the things that we, from the court standpoint, because we have to run our own court security deal also, is as long as you can walk into the building without some form of a metal detector, we're always at issue. And so that's just the nature of it. There's plenty of courthouses that can't do that. These are kind of a mix between, obviously, there's not just a courthouse here, but other government offices in both of the buildings. But right now, we don't. And so we have a bailiff, but we have a bailiff court who's going on, and that's an individual that's in court. So all the other stuff that takes place out in the hallway, or if we don't have court, like my bailiff left today, we wrapped up at 3:30. Bailiff leaves, there's still public that's out there. Officer Marquardt's office faces out to the hallway. Before I came in today, I got 2 emails from forward along to bring on just of different things where, I mean, he's an ex-cop, he listens, got an email on the 10th that just overheard it. I won't say the individual's name, but defendant leave the courtroom. I could hear he was displeased. He was speaking with his attorney trying to keep him calm. That essentially, and I'm just irritated, and stepped out and kind of listened, this being Officer Marquardt, and I could hear under his breath, he then turned and left that quote, "They're lucky they have an officer," end quote. I mean, we just deal with disgruntled people all the time. Officer Marquardt, as I put in, makes that thing bounce. He's with the city for 26 and a half years. I mean, having him be able to carry a gun, which he does, but being able to then make sure that he's covered, I think is just good practice. And again, as I said, he looked into covering himself for insurance, was not able to. Even then he went and talked with, I believe, John Lappin from Lappin Insurance, and they kind of said, really seems like this should be something you are able to do through your employer because that's what you're carrying for. And I think he said, there might be some policies that he could try to finagle, but they were quite expensive through him being able to do that. Some of the personal policies really aren't that bad if you're looking to cover yourself. So I guess that kind of is what I'm hoping to do, is to look in to see if there is a way to find coverage. You guys got questions about?
I do, sir. I have a couple of questions, Your Honor, if I may. Is he the only probation officer, or are there other, I don't know your task
We
organization.
only have 2 probation officers over in district court.
He's the only one. Okay, all right. And you said that Mr. Lappin told him that it looks like it should be a part of his job to,
He was saying it might be to talk to the county to find out through the county's policies if they have coverage, when what you're doing is you're coming to me asking for insurance while you're at work to carry your concealed weapon as part of your work. That really should be looking to see whether they have an ability to get you in under their insurance or not. And I mean, I can tell you with just the way that security is, it's a potential for myself and Judge Black to be doing the same thing.
sure.
And moving forward, so it very well may be additional people that we're looking to do. So I'm just saying, in lieu of being able to have security at the doors where we know anybody coming in is not carrying a weapon, we have to at least try to do as many things as we can to still ensure that it's safe. And so just trying to find out if there's any way to find a way under the policies that we have. If not, what would it cost?
Okay.
So you're going to look into this? Because I know I would have no clue, and I'm sure unless,
So obviously, the county carries insurance that covers our law enforcement officers who carry weapons to their work, and covers them in the case of a discharge of that weapon in the course of them doing their job. So I think the question to our insurance agent is, would we gain coverage under a similar policy to, or even the same one that covers our law enforcement officers? Can we make the argument that, because I assume the coverage that he wants is if for whatever reason he needs to use the weapon in the course of his job as an employee of the district court building, right? This isn't about personal security. This is about what if he uses the weapon in some kind of a situation in which there's a security issue for work. So that would be the question to our insurance carrier is, could we cover him either under the policy that covers our law enforcement officers or under a similar policy that we would pick up for that purpose?
I have no problem with having you look into that and find out a cost. Do you guys have any concerns or issues with that?
No, as I read Judge Curtis's letter, it talked about there are times when he has to leave his office and he actually goes out into the community and has to do home visits or whatever. So
That's the next side to it too, is that he
Yeah.
is also, as a case manager through our drug court, responsible for doing home visits, and he would prefer to be carrying while he goes out and does that. And typically right now it's him and Miss Sue Latujak, the chief probation officer. They do always do them in pairs, but she's not trained. And so that's another situation, yes, where he is directly involved.
I think ultimately the question is that, with the insurance, is there a policy, something, could he be covered under our current policy? If not, what type of policy would that be that he could be covered? And then obviously go from there to come back here to be able to make that decision on that.
And I had a brief discussion with Sheriff Smith, and so I don't want to kind of hold him to it. It's one of the things that I always heard was, well, can we just deputize them? Because the sheriffs have beautiful ability to just deputize citizens, but there are some questions, I guess, about the legality actually of being able to deputize an individual. But regardless, the way Sheriff Smith views it is then if you're deputized, the problem is you're not MCOL certified, so you don't go through all the training. He's not, if you deputize him and then just give him a gun over here, but he's not under Sheriff Smith's direct supervision or training, then the liability, I don't know whether or not it's the best transfer of liability when you don't have that direct control. So he wasn't a big fan of trying to just say, well, let's just deputize him and throw him under my coverage.
I think where we need to start is going back to the insurance and then see what kind of policy, again, if he could be covered under the policy that we already have, and if not, what type of policy it would be. Sure.
Your Honor, if I may ask another question, John?
Yeah.
Your Honor, are you aware of any other probation officers, is he a state employee or county employee, first of all?
He's a county.
Okay, are you aware of any other adult county probation officers that have permission to carry and have, as i.e. benchmarked at all with any other?
I'll ask around. I haven't asked around. I don't think it's uncommon to have some probation officers that do carry, but I will also ask around to the adjoining communities.
Yeah, I would think if Agent parole officer, probation officer Marquardt could do some benchmarking and come back with that information, that would be helpful as well.
We'll see if there's any other districts have probation officers and how they're addressing the issue. So I'll look at it from that and talk with Officer Marquardt to look at it from that perspective.
In the meantime, Mr. Chair, I'm not opposed to it either. I think that's something we should take a look at, and if the current policy, I don't know if we need a motion for that, Mary Catherine, do we need a motion, or we can just say, okay?
Informational stuff to get it.
Yeah, I think
come back.
And then come back at our maybe next meeting.
Yeah, maybe shoot for seeing where each of us are at the next.
Yes, sir.
Security. Okay.
That's what I recommend.
All right. Any other questions on that issue before we move on to the next? All right. I'm hoping this one's a little simpler. There's a budget line item as contained in the memo that was provided that reads for district courtroom security upgrades. We're just looking to have it include district and probate court security upgrades. The reason, I mean, technically I am the probate court that oversees the district court, but where this really came a problem was we were trying to figure out, one, we're trying to get is cameras into the courtroom so that eventually 911 can see the cameras and the staff can then see in. Well, found out that if we were to, because of the listing as being district court only, set it all up, but then they're not going to put a camera in for my probate clerks to be able to see into the district court because it's probate court. I don't want to say I'll just call it silly. And so I'm just asking if we were to change that line item, it's not going to change any of the work that we do through the security. It's just simply that the probate court would also have the same access as the district court, which shares the same court. So that's what we're trying to do there.
So how would changing the line, how is that going to?
It's just the titling of the line. I think it's probably an overly constricting reading because the titling of the line is just that. It's just a title for that expenditure line. What actually governs would have been the board action or the budget notes. But, you know, we can title it and however you want to.
I didn't know whether there was a separate line for probate. There is nothing for probate. So that's the issue.
Right. And I think the expectation when you guys did the budget was that it was inclusive, not exclusive. I know that they are doing a lot of work right now with the IT department to settle on a system that then we can start rolling out pieces of and add to over the course of, this year and the next couple of years to build up a more robust security system. So.
Well, then the only other question would be then, if when we budgeted, did we include, did we think about covering both? Like if we set aside cost and we were thinking district court was this amount and now we're going to include probate court and it's going to double everything, are we going to have the money?
Well, the way that this was framed when we budgeted is that this is just the start, that $15,000 was not going to buy us a complete security camera system for all of the spaces in which we need it. This was to get us a start with the system, perhaps, the software that's needed to run it, and then we would start rolling out cameras as part of the next couple of years worth of projects.
Judge, are the cameras for strictly for security purposes, or are they also for observation purposes for the clerks, I guess? I mean, I understand they kind of go hand in hand, but I mean, are they?
We're in the process of sorting that out, but they would be hand in hand. So it's the idea, so the clerks can be able to look and see what's going on in the courtroom because they can't see what's going on. Then the question, like I said, the other thing we want to have happen is for 911 to have a direct feed, which we talked with Melky and but then being able to monitor.
Her assistant, Al Rapson, is here.
Okay.
I'm on Zoom as well, Judge.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Kim.
Okay.
And she's told me that, they would be able to do that. I know they're putting the tower in this week and that's going to help. But right now there's the issue of law enforcement can't call out from within the courthouse, so it's kind of a dead zone. So being able to have 911, be able to see, and since we're still working on trying to get panic buttons and everything else, to having 911 be able to see that would be, Jesse, back to your kind of question is, yes, it's for them. And then depending on costs is how long do you retain the video for? How good a quality video is it? Is it color? Can you zoom in?
And I guess that was where I was going with this.
In all
Is it
of
just-
those, and so we're hoping, and that's where, again, these line items about, for the security, district court and if approved probate court, so that's obviously inside. We've also talked about the cameras on the outside, what we're going to do about all of that security outside from the courtroom. So this would be kind of the start, but it ultimately, yes, it's both.
Okay.
More importantly, to be honest, is getting it tied into 911 so that they're able to see what's going on in the courtrooms.
So the current budget line item in our county budget, it's identified as district courtroom security upgrades, but it was intended to be all inclusive for district and probate then?
I know that was the discussion, and I just to share, it was just shared with me that Treasurer Ludlow is online, and she did put in the comment that obviously you guys, the commissioners, are free to change the titling of that line item so that it was meant to be those courtrooms.
And Catherine, and none of those are restricted funds specifically, like, I know we do get state money
Is-
for certain courts.
Right, so 402 is your equipment fund.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Do you need a motion or do we just?
Yeah, we can get a motion to change that. I mean, yeah,
I will I'll make the motion that we change the budget line item to include, as the judge has presented, both district and probate court security upgrades.
Let's second that motion.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
All right, folks, thanks very much for your time. Hope you all take care.
Okay, next is,
Janelle.
actually, we'll go, you don't mind.
No, I don't mind.
Yeah, that makes me feel good. Thank you. I appreciate every one of you.
Sit back down.
Excited.
Sit back down. For March of 2023, we had revenue in the amount of $163,621.71. We did get the one-time disbursement that was approved previously, as well as partial deposit from the state. We did the blended funding return of the sheriff and a monthly expenses of $134,689.41. I know that 23,000 looks terrible, but with the budget adjustments, it was actually 48,605 and 97 cents. And then if you look to April, we're back to about 77,000. So that 50,000 was the boost that we needed. I'm hopeful in the coming months as that basic grant money starts coming back, we only see an increase there.
So it's all going to start flowing in.
Oh, I don't think it's all going to start flowing in, but I think we've bridged the gap enough that we can float through waiting for the state disbursements, reimbursements.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Janelle?
Well, thank you.
See that money, that seed money, getting caught back up.
Okay, now I think it's to Mary Catherine.
I'm fine if you just want to shift that to the last, if you want to go ahead and do the juvenile justice ad hoc committee, the ambulance,
Oh, yeah, why don't we? Because we just,
because I think that will take up the bulk of the discussion time, probably.
okay. And who's you speaking on that?
I can.
Travis?
I can. I think I'll kick it off and then we can all.
Is that why you're here?
I'm just expecting.
Oh, okay.
No, you're not. So the Juvenile Detention Center Ad hoc Committee met last on 11 April. And we discussed further the regional juvenile justice center. And a number of counties, we received feedback. Mary Catherine attended the meeting, I believe it's 5 April. Is that correct? 5 April. And they provided more information on what this regional facility may look like. And essentially what they're looking at is a 48-bed facility. Correct me if I'm wrong, 48, correct? Okay, 48 beds. And that it is the objective or the goal is more of a long-term placement facility focused on treatment. And one of the major issues with focusing on treatment that we have right now is obviously there is no similar system or a facility in this area. And getting families involved is difficult because families usually don't have the means to travel those great distances. So again, that's why they're looking at it regionally to be able to provide that for the counties in northeast or northern Michigan. One of the discussion points was also where might this be located? And right now, the leading course of action is to have it in the kind of the Grayling area because of the counties of Ogemaw, Roscommon, Alpena, and others. That's kind of the centrally focused location for everyone in the radius. So leading towards that discussion. Commissioner Osmer also talked and asked questions about a possible satellite office facility from the organization known as Wolverine. And that is a new concept, and there may be some future discussion on having a satellite office, if you will, located maybe more in the Alpena area to serve Alpena, Alcona, Montmorency, Presqu'île, et cetera. But that was just a discussion. One of the other points that was brought up is Chairman Peterson asked if we had any kind of a square foot cost identified for a detention center such as this, and probation officer McKinsey was tasked to go back to see if we could determine a square footage cost for a facility such as this as we move forward. We have not scheduled another ad hoc meeting yet because we're waiting. The next meeting, I believe, is 8 May. There's another, say again?
Yes.
Yes, 8 May is the next regional meeting that we will be having. And after that is completed, then we'll get another ad hoc committee scheduled. One of our discussion points also is, I looked at this as kind of the strategic plan. Okay, long-term treatment, got it. It's down the road a number of years. What do we do to resolve our short-term issues of consequence management, I guess I'll call it, for the probation officers? Because right now there is nothing for juveniles who are on probation. They violate probation, and it's very difficult to have any kind of a consequence to that behavior. So we believe we are going to go back to the sheriff's office to look at what we can do to maybe up to a 4-bed facility, for the lack of a better term, to be able to utilize for Alpena County and other surrounding counties possibly, but mostly it's focused on our Alpena County juveniles for a short-term placement as a consequence to violating probation. So I'll look to the other, Commissioner Osmer, I know Chairman Peterson was there as well, and Mary Catherine and Janelle were all involved with that. So I'll open up to their supplements.
I think that was a very good synopsis of what was covered, so I have nothing else to add.
Janelle, you applied for a grant for a short term.
I did not apply for the grant. I did the intent to apply.
Intent to
raise
apply.
the age, yes. And I did speak to Eric. He talked to CJ, and they said anywhere from 515 to 550 a square foot. So Eric got right back to me with that. I'm sure he'll bring it to the meeting.
How much did you say again? 5 what?
$515 to $550 a square foot. And then he said things like, if we don't need a kitchen, that number would go down. If you're adding to an existing structure, it probably becomes a little bit lower, because Eric was kind of giving him ideas.
And that grant that Bill was talking about, is that something that would be, you could apply for then to, I guess, get money to start down that path then?
Get money and get it built. That's the plan. Utilize that, kind of leverage that 100% grant funding. That isn't really a competitive process. It's not. Leverage that to build this without having to use any local funds.
Okay.
And then, of course, building the facility is one, and then, of course, the next part is staffing. We'd look at maybe a part-time staff that could be trained to be available to provide supervision, or would we compensate the sheriff's office for corrections officers to provide that better ratio of supervision, I guess, I don't know what else to call it, but to provide that if a placement is made. So we have to still, tackle that as we move forward.
How does that work if so, and again, I don't know how this works, but if you're applying for the grant and it's technically in like the Gaylord area, is this?
So we're talking about sort of
Two different things,
two
parallel.
facilities, sort of working on parallel paths. So one is this 48-bed facility that would be down in the Grayling area that would be for long-term stays, anything over, was it 30 days? That requires more intensive care, more intensive evaluation, more intensive services, requires education, healthcare, all those kinds of things. So this larger facility would be a regional pull, handle all of those tougher things. Then
That's a separate bill.
that's a separate build from this other facility because we still have short-term needs that aren't being met. And so can we parallel path this? The facility that would be a regional facility, the funding for that would come primarily from revenue bonds. So that would also not be taxpayer financed. It would be a revenue bond financing. But then this other facility, which would be built here, potentially would help meet our short-term needs and potentially the short-term needs of others in our immediate area. Because that's part of the discussion that was had is if you have somebody who really just needs like a 24-hour or 48-hour placement, do you want to haul them all the way down to Grayling and back to do that? So
Was there discussion on how many beds would be at the local facility?
I think we were talking 4.
How many, we can go up to 10, Janelle?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, we can go up to 10 beds.
Right. But if we did 4 to 6, that seemed to feel,
That would meet the needs,
yeah.
meet our local need.
If it were to go up to 10, could the facilities at the sheriff's department, such as the kitchen and whatnot, handle that addition?
I would have no idea. That would be a question for Sheriff Smith. We did talk about it in the past. And I think the preference of the sheriff's office, and I don't speak for them, but I think the preference would be like standalone stuff. And you do have things like the sight and sound requirement. The kids have to be out of sight and sound of the adult inmates. But I think something like this is ideal because then when we get those kids that are charged as adults, we got somewhere else to put them. But I couldn't speak to what the sheriff would prefer or not prefer.
Cash, you got.
It would take a lot more work, just looking at it, there's some things we'd have to do to see what would be the best way to build out off of our building. So it'd take a little bit of planning, I think.
We've got some work.
Right, yeah, we do. And again, we're waiting, we're moving along, but we do have some work, but we're waiting to hear from the state on the raise the age funding. Janelle, you said it was like $4 or $6 million that we put in for?
Yes, I think it was 6
I
million.
have to go back and look at mine. I think it was 6 million. So to trying to determine what kind of money we're going to get through the state from raise the age that we could put towards that build out at the jail.
So do they have specific areas that you have to use that raise the age money?
The raise the age money is for the 17-year-olds when they pass the legislation.
Yep.
So when I initially went to them in, I don't even know if it was September or October, and said, I've got this idea about a facility. I'd like to leverage this raise the age money because we don't have anywhere to place anyone because of the 17-year-olds. And we also have 17-year-olds and the raise the age, and I think there's 4 of them that work there, but the one that I spoke to and the other one I emailed said that that is a sufficient nexus, it would qualify. And the child care fund does not allow for reimbursement of capital improvements. Otherwise, I could just run it through the child care fund. We put it in the annual budget and see what they say. That capital improvements are specifically excluded. So that's where the raise the age funding is. We're paying all kinds of stuff through the child care fund that is 100% reimbursed because of that raise the age funding. But they set up this other avenue for things that are not generally reimbursable through the child care fund, but still expenses incurred by the counties and courts as related to these 17-year-olds. when the legislation the first year, there were counties that applied for and got Yukon Denali's. One county built an entire new courtroom with offices. Of course, Judge Black would not allow me to buy a Yukon Denali, even though it's not going to cost anyone in here any money. Judge Black shut it down. But they were all successful that first year. People just like swung for the fences. And there were counties that absolutely saw the increase in caseload, absolutely needed a new courtroom, needed new staff, and Raise the Age 100% funded that. So that was where my leap came. If they can get a courtroom, I could probably get a couple beds.
Okay. So you guys went, you said, so who's going to the May regional meeting?
Mary Catherine and myself, I do have a conflict that I have to deconflict because the Veterans Affairs Board meeting is on the same morning. But I think I will at this point ask to not go to Veterans because it's running pretty well right now. And I will plan to accompany Mary Catherine to that 8 May meeting.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions?
And then we'll come back, further discussion, obviously, on a short, what we'll call our short-term plan or local plan.
Okay.
Okay. But there is a need, obviously, as Janelle and Eric McKenzie have both mentioned.
Okay. On that topic then?
I am, sir.
Okay. So what, ambulance? Wait a minute. Okay, ambulance. Oh, where do we go?
Back to Mary Kay.
Oh, okay, back up to Mary Catherine.
All right. So as part of the discussions around animal control and that program and potential for how we can best serve animal control in the animal control program, one of the things that we had discussed was how to gain engagement and input from the community. So I did put together a survey that I shared some of the questions out to get your input and thoughts on. The idea would be to put this survey out after it would be approved by the full board and to have it go live May 1st. You know, part of the looking for input is, one, do you think these questions are the right questions? Do you think there are additional questions that we should be asking? And then how long should the survey be live? I know that one of the questions that was asked was in regards to the unfortunate ability that there might be to spam the survey. I did double check with SurveyMonkey, which is who we'd be using since they're free. I like free, is that by default, multiple responses are turned off for the survey, meaning the survey allows only one response per browser or per email address. So that's the default. We could turn on and allow it, but I would recommend that we don't, that we leave it as a single survey response. So if anyone wants a copy, you can see that as the response from SurveyMonkey. So if you try to take the survey again, you'll get a message saying that you've already taken the survey and it won't allow you to take the survey.
So you're saying that's based on the email how does it know your email?
It's either the email that you use, because we can ask them to submit their email, or it's based on the browser. So if somebody logs in from, their computer and uses their browser, it's going to recognize that IP address, that browser, and not allow you to, right, and block it from submitting from that computer again.
Replies and responses to it from the same browser location.
Right.
It's not foolproof. I mean, somebody can use somebody else's computer and whatever but it is,
But in the end, it's only going to allow one from that computer. So you would have to set up a computer bank or something if you wanted to see.
Have I know when I thought I've taken surveys where you enter your name. Is that something that this would do?
We could either do a name or an email address. I'm hesitant about that because I know that some people are wary about putting their emails into surveys. And I'm a little concerned that if we did that, we would limit our response. But that is certainly not an option that we could do.
I would think we have individuals who come and speak during public comment. They have to give their name and address. I think this should be treated similarly. I mean, if they want to, speak to something, I think that's.
I think, yeah, maybe not with the email address, because then you don't, someone doesn't want to get spam, but if you kind of like what Jesse's saying, that, when they come and speak at public comment, we're getting their input, on this survey potentially. And, if I'm going to fill out a survey and I'm adamant about the survey that I'm filling out, I have no problem telling you my name. I've done probably a lot of surveys that I've had to put my name on.
I can certainly add that. I mean, right now, sort of the only demographic question that is on there is, are you currently a resident of Alpena County? And that isn't something that prevents them from filling out the rest of the survey.
I'm just going to say,
tells us.
if someone wasn't a resident of the county and there's no way of, unless they put their name and address, then that would indicate that they're a resident.
Correct. You're relying on people to answer honestly.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
And when we put this survey out, is it going to be, people going to be able to access it through our Alpena County website then? That's the intent?
Yes, we would put it up on the website. We would also put it up on, our Facebook page, on the animal control Facebook page. I mean, we would definitely do some news releases, definitely try to get it out there as much as possible. Which is why I think a slightly longer response period might be nice, just so that we kind of catch as much input as we can.
As I've indicated in the past, that we have not made any decisions, we've been talking with Michelle in February, and I stated back in February that there was no intent to make any changes tomorrow. I said, it could be 6 months, it could be a year. We don't have a clue yet because we're just now looking at the stuff.
And that's kind of what these questions are getting at is, do people believe that the current program is meeting the needs? Do we believe that it's, that it's not meeting the needs? It gives opportunity for input about, things that might help improve the program, or things that they're doing really well, things that we might see change. And gets at some of the things about in regards to the animal control ordinance itself as well, as the actual shelter operation. So it's trying to be kind of as inclusive as possible about the whole program to get some feedback from the community about it.
As I was looking through the survey, Mary Catherine, I see down at the bottom of question 7, there is question 8, excuse me, there is an opportunity to provide a narrative of, other than just clicking yes or no or which option, there's an opportunity. That's question 8, and what changes would most improve the animal control program? And there's an opportunity to people to provide a narrative or a recommendation or what they think they could be done better or whatever. So I'm glad to see that's in there.
When did you, because I can't even get into my email, when did you send that out?
I sent it out earlier today.
Yeah.
So I don't know if anyone who's had a chance to look at it, and if the plan is to take it live on May 1st, and I did share it with Sheriff Smith earlier, and he thought that the questions looked good. He didn't have any additions to it. But if you think of a question that you think ought to be here that's not, definitely let me know, and we can add it in before the survey is finalized and approved.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to kind of go through.
Oh, yeah.
this.
Sure. Yeah.
But so if you want to do this by May 1st, we don't have obviously another courts meeting until whatever. Will we be discussing this at the full board then?
So it would be my understanding that we would take this to full board for approval before it goes live. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And I agree with you. I think it's going to be important to get the word out that we're looking for community involvement and input. And I think, I don't know, we haven't really talked about a time frame that it's out there, but I don't know, 30 days. I mean, I think that would be important to make it to give everyone an opportunity to be able to.
I think 30 days is probably plenty.
I agree. Yeah, I wouldn't want to go more than that.
Board meeting to board meeting.
Yeah.
Absolutely, sir. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And would there be a way, and I don't know how this works, but to go out there and, we're 2 weeks in and you already see you got 30,000 responses to the survey, I mean, is there a way that we can see how many people have, okay.
Yeah, I can get daily analytics, weekly analytics, whenever you would like them, I can run a report.
No, it's not that I just would be curious to see, is it kind of like, is anybody out there doing anything? Or did we have everybody and their brother go out there and respond to the surveys?
Have, I'm guessing, local media kind of help drive individuals.
I hope so. I certainly have gotten, some interest from the local media in regards to running a story on it. So I would hope that they will help push getting responses, because obviously it would be nice to get, as broad a response as possible.
Well, for whatever reason, I can't get in this, but I'll take a look at this. And then, so what's our intent then? We'll just, do we make a motion then to bring it to full board, or because I don't know if I'd say that, and again, I haven't really had a time to read this, but that we make a motion to then move a survey from this committee to full board, and then we can iron out or refine the questions if we need to at a later date between now and the full board.
So I could make the motion to elevate this to full board as a draft, and then pending input from the full board and possible changes at that time. Or for possible input, I guess, and changes at that time. Would that make?
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Okay, have no issue with that.
Okay. So any discussion with that then? Any further discussion?
No, I think it's important that, we do this, get it out, give sufficient time, I think, and in my opinion, 30 days is plenty. What about people who may not have access to internet but would still like to provide input? Do we have some maybe paper copies that are someplace at the courthouse that they could fill it out and just provide into the box, so to speak? Is that a possibility?
We can set a survey response box up in the commissioner's office, or maybe even in the lobby, so that
Probably in the
we
lobby.
don't have to deal with the stairs quite as much.
Right.
And maybe put one out at the sheriff's office as well for people to turn in responses. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, and there was one question on here just about money. Obviously, just asking whether 180,000 is just right, if we need more, whatever. And this is a question outside of the survey, but it does beg the question: do we have some sort of metrics or anything for like what's happened over the past 5 years? What was it, 5 years ago when we changed the way?
Right, I was able to run a few reports, so I did want to share with everyone. Do you want to deal with your motion and then?
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I thought, yeah, I'm sorry.
We were trying to have discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, so I
Apologies.
guess with no further discussion on the survey, the motion for the survey, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Sorry about that.
Now your
And
question.
the only reason I ask is because I do know we have been getting a lot of correspondence, and obviously I don't know what's being shared with a lot of individuals, but it's definitely not anything that we've said in these meetings, because like John said, this is just stuff we're looking at. There's no action being discussed at this time. As we dive in and deal with the budgetary issues that we have, we're diving into every department, and I guess my thing is the metrics would be helpful. And just kind of understanding, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I do know we've gotten somewhere it says, we need to increase funding. That'd be great, but I'd like to know where they want us to get this funding from. Do we cut, the funding from services to juveniles, to our law enforcement officers? I mean, we only have so much money, so anyway. So the metrics would be helpful.
Yeah.
Well, if you got something.
Well, so I had gotten the question a couple of times, and from commissioners and from folks in the public in regards to the budget. What I'm passing around is the budget for ACO this year. It was passed for this year.
There enough?
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry, there's 5, okay.
I hope I made enough. The next document I'm going to pass out is a expenditures report from last year, so through the end of 12/31/2022. I will run a 5-year report, Commissioner Osmer, but this was what I could get now. if you look at it, you see that, you did budget about $50,000 to come in terms of donations. Last year, in 2022, you had $54,000 come in donations. So that is a perfectly appropriate number to be in there. Donations that were spent, you can see in the year to date. So what you want to look at is the second column. So the year to date balance 12/31/2022. You spent $28,789 out of those donations. So without running the actual invoices that come through that, that's where the bulk of sort of the day-to-day operational expenses appear to be coming. But your biggest expense for running your animal control program comes from people, which honestly is the biggest expense for the county, bar none, right? It's the ACO officer and it's your shelter attendants. Those account for, the biggest chunk of the operational budget for the shelter operations. So to get the budget that I put together for you, the 2023 budget, you have to grab the ACO officer from the Sheriff's Department budget and pull that over. Now, obviously, the ACO is a sheriff's deputy, so there are other duties that ACO officer also does as a sheriff's deputy, but the bulk of their time is assigned to being the animal control officer, so it makes sense to put that into the ACO budget to get a true sense of what it costs to run that program. So you can see even with the donations that come in, that program runs deficit, which means it pulls on the general fund to the tune of $101,139.
What I would like to be able to do is to be able to pull personnel cost, i.e. the ACO versus the control shelter.
Right.
Because I see those as two, they're obviously, the animal control officer runs the shelter. But regardless if we have a shelter or not, we're going to have an animal control officer. That, I won't call it a fixed cost, but it's nearly a fixed cost. So what I'd like to know, what I'm going to focus on is what does it cost to run the shelter? I mean, I know we had the conversation that in all other counties, they contract out the animal control officer position. That is a course of action, not necessarily the course of action. So when I look at these costs the costs that are going to be incurred, I'd like to know what it costs to run the shelter. And then obviously it's easier to pull out what it costs for an animal control officer because those personnel costs are there. Shelter attendants, so that's part of the running the shelter. So I get that.
And I will say one cost that is not included in here, and I really couldn't figure out a good way other than assigning an arbitrary percentage, is administrative overhead.
Okay.
So the Sheriff's Department, through their administrative assistant, provides a huge amount of administrative support for the running of the shelter operations. So obviously that's a cost, right? If that is not run through the sheriff's office, that would be a cost that either, we would have to bring into the county commissioner's office or to whatever department it's assigned to, or it would have to cover on its own. So that is a cost that's not included here. So you would have to increase the expenditure amount for this program by whatever you consider to be that administrative overhead for Kat's time that she spends, and what other oversight that the sheriff and the undersheriff also provide, and time that they spend in dealing with ACO operations.
Kim just sent a 5-year through on your emails, so.
Okay.
One more question, and this kind of goes back to our discussion at the Parks meeting. We had at the Parks meeting. There's a lot of this is covered now. I don't see it in here, but maybe it is. But if you look at the utilities that have been used at the campground 3 years ago.
Merchants building.
Merchants building, from 3 years ago to now, it's doubled. So we went from 9,000 to 18,000. That 9,000 I don't think is reflected in here. But I don't think parks should be absorbing the cost of money that animal control is spending on their.
In that case, it's actually the fairgrounds. Because that went through.
Yeah, oh, yeah, fair enough. I forgot that we're not,
And it's not,
we haven't incorporated.
and you would have to assign an arbitrary percentage to that because that is not separately metered at this point. So we don't have a way to just pull that utility cost. But yes, that would be another cost that we don't capture as part of this budgeting right now, are utilities.
But I mean, if we look at, I mean, she did give us that, what was it, five? I think it was 5 years.
Yep.
It was a 5-year cap, and it's very obvious it doubles. The merchant building was being used for other things. And 9,000 is a significant, chunk of change, I think, for both budgets, so.
And some of that is straight up utility costs, right? I mean, power and electricity and water have all gone up, but obviously usage, yes, has to be a part of that consideration. And I think probably one number to look at would be, prior to, well, except that building has always been used. So yeah.
And so it's a pretty steady, I think, but anyways, just something to look at. I just want to make sure, again, when we're looking at numbers, we're making sure that those numbers reflect, that they're accurate.
As we move forward, kind of no matter what we do with the animal control program, if there are no changes made administratively, which is to say we leave the program essentially intact, one suggestion that I would make is within the general fund, that the numbers that are approved, and if Kim were here, she could tell me the verbiage that I need for it. But as part of the general fund accounting that's approved by the state of Michigan, there is in fact a department for animal control. And my recommendation would be that as we put together the 2024 budget, that at the bare minimum, we create an actual animal shelter budget, so that we can more accurately capture and reflect the expenses associated with running the shelter.
I would think the electric bill could probably split as well and get their own service.
Yes, we certainly could, get a separate meter for that building, and then we would definitely have the costs.
Because that topic did come up at a fair board meeting.
I'm sure it probably did.
And I think what Jesse was talking about too, well, yeah, total cost, but never mind. Because I was going to say, you're talking of putting a meter on the actual ACO building.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We use gas there as a heat wise.
Yes, I think if I remember right, I was trying to find my budget, I must have left it from that night, but I believe it was natural gas was a line item on
Well,
and
and
electricity.
Yeah.
going back to the merchants building when the animals have been in there, that is, and I remember specifically when we've used it in the past, that is a gas, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Because it was so loud, it was hard to even talk in there.
What would the cost to put a meter on a building be? A second meter? I mean, because I guess it's just a mechanism that everything's already there.
And I know we've had it done before. Wes, do you have any idea of what it would cost to put a separate meter on the ACO building?
I have no idea. I can find that out. Water and gas, water, sewage and gas are metered separate.
Okay.
I could put together a spreadsheet if you'd like on those costs.
That would be great.
So looking at the two documents you gave us, Mary Catherine, one is the 2023 budget, correct? What we estimate our revenues will be and what we estimate our expenditures will be.
Correct.
This other document shows a year-to-date balance, for example, of the end of calendar year and fiscal year 2022, where it shows expenditures were actually at $100,000, not at $170,000.
Correct, because what is not in this line, you see ordinance enforcement, that is your shelter attendance. And what is not in this budget is your actual ACO officer, because the actual ACO officer is carried on the sheriff's department budget. So that's why I gave you this 2023, and you can see that line item is in blue.
Highlighted in blue.
Yep, it's a different department.
Okay.
Or it would be it's pulling that number from a different department.
Well, wasn't there other things underneath this ordinance?
Yes, I pulled those out.
Oh.
So soil erosion is also under ordinance enforcement, and I did pull those expenses out of that when I gave you that 2023 amended budget line. And you can see them, and when I had Lynn pull this 22 report for me, I also had those pulled out. So they're not muddying the waters for us.
Okay, so as far as the numbers go, we're good. We'll get more numbers from Wes moving forward on the cost of separating, or yeah, did you say, Wes, that you actually have the costs of those utilities?
I put together a sheet of water, sewer, and natural gas, but the power is not on a separate meter.
Okay,
I
okay,
can get you a cost to add a meter to it.
okay, all right.
One last question, if I may.
Yeah.
So looking at the expenditures for 2023, we have the ACO in blue, and we have shelter attendance, and we have social security personnel costs, social security, Medicare, workman's comp, sick and accident. Those numbers, are those just for the attendance, the staff, or is that inclusive of the ACO?
Those are just for the shelter.
Just for the shelter attendance? Okay.
Then those numbers for the animal control officer would be under the sheriff's.
As a sheriff
So like that,
deputy.
that is not inclusive of social security, Medicare, workers' comp, or retirement, which obviously is not something that the shelter attendants qualify for since they are part-time.
Okay, got it.
Do we have any other questions on?
Yeah, I do. So in here in 2023, we've got a grant expense of $10,000. I look back to the 2022, we did the same thing. The board did the same thing, as had $10,000, but zero was expended. So that's a $10,000 grant expense. When you look at it, it's a bit misleading. We budgeted in there, but we didn't use it last year, and we may or may not use it this year. So, you know, that,
It's a place to house if we were to receive a grant that was, so right now, most of what we are bringing in, you can see are pulled in through that donations line. And then it's expensed through miscellaneous expense donation pass-through.
yep.
I think there was an expectation last year and then maybe again this year that there might be actual grants that were applied for, and grant funding has to be accounted for separately than just donations, right? Donations is just, here's some stuff, here's some money. Whereas a grant would be, you know, an actual grant that would be received from an agency or an organization. And so I think there was a thought that maybe that would be applied, something.
It's probably kind of like,
Only if it's a reimbursable grant or a non-reimbursable grant, I guess, or
Well, you still have to have a place to expense your, whatever you spent from it, right?
from the grant. Okay. Okay. My only point is that it looks like we have a deficit of $101,000, and we may not have a deficit of $101,000 based upon 2023. That's all, that's my point.
Right. Well, for 2022, you know, you had a net, so a negative net of 35,000. If you put your ACO officer on top of that, you're going to run very close to that negative $100,000.
Okay.
And Kim Ludlow did forward a 5-year, and I think she copied all of you guys on that email. So you can see, and again, you know, what she forwarded does not include the animal control officer. That's on a separate line. So you kind of have to add some numbers together. But in 2019, the program ran a deficit of $6,450 to this year, in which it's budgeted to run a deficit of $32,000. So you have an increased, you know, deficit expenditure of about $28,000. And again, that does not include your ACO officer. So, you know, the deficit for this program has definitely increased over the past 5 years.
Okay. I have no further questions. Thanks.
Any other questions? Questions?
Can I address the grant?
Sure.
So I apply for the Animal Welfare Fund grant every year. Typically, there is a $10,000 limit on that. We don't hear back whether or not we get any of the money that we applied for before the budget is due. So we put that $10,000 in there to budget for it just in case. This last year, we just got notified a week or two ago that we'll be receiving a $3,000 grant. That is,
For this year?
yeah, so instead of $10,000, that'll be $3,000. That is 100% refundable or reimbursed grant. So that will be, that number there should.
So we can do an adjustment and then make that 3,000 as opposed to the 10,000. So, okay. Thank you. All right, so we're moving on from this then. We're good? Everyone got all their answers, questions answered?
Good to go for now.
Okay. So where are we? Juvenile, childcare, ambulance report, ambulance fund monthly report.
So you have those reports in your packet. If anyone has any questions, I don't know if Chief Edmonds has anything for today.
You don't need any money?
Anymore.
New ambulances or
We did get the one from the township, so.
you do have it?
Yeah, we do have it. I'm in the process of getting you guys an updated list of titles and everything that we currently have.
Okay.
So we have one vehicle that will cycle out and we'll get back to you guys with the title. So that can go back into your fleet to wherever you need to.
Right, thank you, because I knew that there was something that I wanted to bring up as part of that. So yes, so we will be getting an ambulance back, and I wanted to ask the committee, because I don't have a history on this, as to what we typically do when we get an ambulance back.
I can tell you.
Okay,
Because I dealt with it. We had two ambulances drag across the street from the, what is it, county or not county, but a city
From DPW.
DPW across the street, two ambulances, and I think we made $400.
Maybe.
Yeah, which is not much. And then we had another ambulance that sat over at the fairgrounds that we were able to, I think someone bought it to make it a party mobile. Not really, but I think they were going to convert I actually saw in one of those TV shows where they turned it into a party mobile. But they had I think they bought it for a camper, and I thought we made a couple $1,000s on that one, if I recall. So we went, when you think about how much we're spending, $200,000 or so on an ambulance, and we had those two dragged across the street, and we were lucky to get $200 a piece for, and again, they were in tough shape, but, so there is no, I don't think we're going to get a windfall with this ambulance.
So what I would suggest as a recommendation, because there are companies that are buying them to refurbish them, and we can put you in touch with vendors, probably the cabin chassis, they would scrap. But they might buy it and reuse all the cabinetry and stuff, and they refurbish them basically to push out a used ambulance. And they're not gonna give you much for it.
Well, hopefully more than $200.
They probably would give you more than $200, but I know the vendors they're looking for those recovered ambulances that people put out of service. They can be re-chassied one time. And so that's what they tend to do.
When you say re-chassis, do you mean you take the actual box?
Put it on a new cabin chassis.
So what are they going to use off of that old ambulance? Are they going to use the new frame or whatever? And they can reuse that frame?
Nope, actually what they do is they scrap the frame, basically the drivetrain, the engine, the cab.
Yeah.
All they use is the patient compartment.
Okay.
And they basically strip it right down, they repaint it, put new brackets on it, redo the cabinetry, make it look similar to new, and put it on a new cabin chassis if they can get one. So, and then they are cycling those ambulances back at a lesser cost.
Yeah, get us in touch with the people that, because like I said,
Worth the conversation.
yeah, if we can get more than the 200,
And if you want to send me that information, I'd be happy to spearhead looking at our options.
And the other ambulance that you just received from the township is out getting
It's getting decaled right now.
Re-decaled?
Radios in it.
Okay.
We had the mechanic went basically through top to bottom, make sure all the fluids, everything, changed everything else, so it's like new. It's only had 25,000 miles on it. Sends like the oil and stuff away to make sure there's no metal shavings and like that in it.
Sure.
Gives it a good once over. Tires are good, make sure it's balanced. And then the decals, that's all we're waiting on.
So when do you think that'll go into operation, chief?
Probably within about 4 weeks.
About a month?
So once we get it all done, then we have to stock it. We have to pull one rig out of service to put this one in service. And then it has to be inspected by the state. So it's basically just whenever the state inspector can come in.
Okay. Thank you.
The box, is the box made of aluminum?
It is.
So you said that it can only be re-chassied once, and why is that?
It's actually a triple K standard. Ambulance manufacturers that actually build the ambulances, it's in their standards for what the federal government allows. So they can do it one time. Just because there's issues, there's changes in the type of construction, the safety features and that type of stuff in it. So they only allow it one time.
Okay. So any other questions regarding the ambulance or ambulance funds? If not, discussion, do we have any other discussion?
Do you want to receive and file the?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
How about we do that?
Motion to receive and file.
Okay, we got a motion
I'll support.
and support. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. And that's all we have, right? Except for public comment. Anyone wishing to speak for public comment? Please get up to the podium, come up to the podium and speak. What do you have to say? Just if you'd give your name and address, Kim would love to track that. Is there anybody on Zoom that would like to speak for public comment?
I would.
Okay, go ahead.
I have a suggestion on the survey that when you send the survey out,
Could you just tell
I'm
us?
sorry. Nancy McSwain, 434 Tuttle in Alpena.
Okay, thank you.
On the survey, you might want to explain the difference between a protection shelter and a control shelter. So people don't get them confused because they're often think of it the same thing.
Okay, thank you.
And I also have a statement.
Okay, go ahead.
While I know nothing has been decided yet, I read that the commissioners, you guys are considering doing only the state required minimum, but think about that for a little bit. Do you expect the bare minimum of care at your doctor's office or the hospital? Would you like only the bare minimum of care if your house is on fire or if you are in a car accident? If you own a dog and is sick or injured, do you want your vet to only do the bare minimum? Cutting the funding to animal control shelter to bare minimum would be like tying one arm behind the ACO officer's back. While I do not know, I would assume that many more dogs in this county have a rabies vaccine and licenses since she started holding those clinics on her free time. She has volunteers that work those clinics. Where would most of the dogs go? Dogs taken in by the ACO be? They would still need to be housed at the ACO shelter. Animals that are in the legal system still need to be cared for. Occasionally, it could be a dog that most people are not able to deal with. But our current ACO, Michelle Reed, is also a licensed vet tech, not someone just giving a quick 10-minute training session on what to do. I think it was a little over a year ago that the Havana brown cat hoarding situation was discovered only because the owner passed away. All those cats had to be caught, treated for many issues, but then Michelle knew it was going to be too overwhelming for her department to care for them all. She has the contacts and knew how to reach protection and rescue groups for them to go to instead of putting them down. The bare minimum could have instead been to keep the healthiest looking ones and put the rest to sleep. Instead, they moved on to better lives. So as a taxpayer, I expect more than just bare minimum to care for all animals in the county. We deserve to have it fully funded. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Hi,
We got, hold on one second. We have someone in the court, or the commissioner's room. We'll get back to you in a second.
okay, thank you.
3 minutes, and if you could state your name.
Yeah, my name's Dan Sharp. I live at 450 Sunset Boulevard. I've adopted animals from Michelle. I've also dealt with many different humane society around the state for other adoptions and other animals. And everybody that I've talked to said that, yeah, I've gotten animals from Michelle and animal control. They've had nothing but praises. Gaylor has said, don't know how she does it. And they got 4 over there, and their county's smaller than ours. All I can say is we need animal control, we need Michelle, and we need more help. To me, you know, I've went through the clinic, had all my dogs vaccinated, paid the money and everything else. Everybody's up to date. I don't have to worry about any problems, no fines, no fees. You know, more clinics we have to help out people that can't afford it. And there's a lot of people in this town that can't afford to take their dog to vet, spend $200 a pop. Because I called to ask and see how much it was to have my dogs have their vaccines up to date for the rabies. And they wanted $200 plus an office call and everything else. So everything that Michelle's done in this town to help people out with their animals, with the food banks and everything else, if they needed it, I'm all for it. I'm all for her. I've also worked at Humane Society back in the day when Helen used to run it. And I'll tell you what, it's not like what it used to be back then. You know, I've been in the Humane Society here in town. 1 dog and all cats. I've had people make the comments, well, you told me that to spend or donate $100. And they were at the point in their life where they're at the lowest low and couldn't even afford food for their kids, let alone their animals. And then they tell them that. I mean, I'm sorry, but I'm not impressed with a lot of things in this town. And I've been born and raised in this town, and I've lived all over the place. Best thing you guys can do is leave the ACO alone and give them full funding. Because I'm not impressed, especially with people that have been born and raised in this town.
Okay, thank you. Want to go next?
Time's up, sorry.
That's Pelkey, 7011 Long Rapids Road. Just a comment on the budget. Yeah, I know I'm short. Just a comment on the budget, and I respect the fact that if we're going to make the ACO department self-sustaining and make sure that the money is right as far as pulling the ACO wages or whatever out of that. Remember, there has to be an adjustment on the sheriff's department side then. It's got to be a tit for tat type of thing. You know, it has to be taken from one and put into the other. When the money was sprung around, I go, something doesn't quite sound right. So just a comment on that part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else in the room before we go to Zoom again? No? Okay. Zoom, you're up. 3
Hi.
minutes.
Okay,
Go ahead.
my name is Dawn Marweed. I live at 11011 Emery Street, Essenik, Michigan. So our county is in full compliance with a very knowledgeable animal control officer and deputy who goes above and beyond to ensure the safety and welfare of animals and provides additional services many times on her own hours to the citizens of Alpena County. Our county has a control shelter that is staffed with skilled and knowledgeable people who understand animal control laws, along with knowing how to care for the many types of personalities that these animals come in with. In addition to the skilled staff that is at the shelter, the ACO shelter has many dedicated, caring and compassionate volunteers. Along with the volunteers, the shelter program receives many types of donations, such as food, cleaning supplies, etc., along with many dedicated hours that they give from our caring community, which help offset operating expenses to this control shelter. Based on this, why would we want our county to have anything else besides what was just mentioned? As a citizen of Alpena County, I want a dedicated animal control officer who not only enforces animal control laws, but also helps educate our community on the laws and policies. One who helps educate on spaying and neutering and is involved in the trap, neuter, release program. One who brings the low-cost vaccination clinics to our area. One who goes out on her own time to search for missing dogs. One who goes out and helps the owner set traps and makes plans in hopes of bringing that lost dog back home. One who takes an almost frozen porcupine on the side of the road to our local wildlife rehab. This is what we currently have. Why would our county not want this? If you look at what has been done at the fairgrounds, at the ACO shelter, we've updated kennels for both the dogs and the cats based on donations. It has updated flooring. They've put outdoor kennels up there. They've added privacy screening. They've painted the outside of the building, all with our volunteers from our community. That is how much our community puts into this ACO shelter because of the dedication of our ACO and our ACO deputy officer. So it is your responsibility to make sure that the animal control services and control shelter meet the needs of our community. And as a tax-paying citizen of Alpena County, I believe making any other decision than leaving it as would be a total disservice to our entire county. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else on Zoom that wanted to talk?
I'd like to talk.
Okay. Just if you could state your name and address, and we'll get that, and then 3 minutes.
My name is Angel Hawks. My address is 2773 State Street, Nasanique. My little girl here came from Michelle. She was a bad hoarder case, and you guys need to understand what that means to me. Michelle does a great job, and she gets the dogs like my little Carmi here, who have been beaten and abused and are at the bottom of the barrel, and she finds them the perfect home. You guys need to understand what that means to people. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that it? Okay. If nothing else, the next meeting is Monday, May 15th, 4 o'clock. I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Hey, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are adjourned.